Welcome to all of you. My name is Eduard van der Haas. I am a Market Intelligence Program Manager at CBI, and I will be your host for today's webinar on shea butter in Europe, tapping into the food ingredients market. I will start with a few general and practical remarks. Please note that we cannot hear or see you. You still though have the possibility to interact with us throughout the questions tab, and we will consult these questions and answer a selection of them at the end of today's session. We will also be able to look back and share this webinar as it will be shortly put on our website and YouTube channel. Please also complete our short survey at the end of the webinar in order for us to gather your feedback on this session. And lastly, if you have any audio or technical problems during this session, we advise you to switch to the phone call modus to solve the problems. Next slide, please. So going through today's webinar on shea butter, we'll have two very special presenters today, Peter Lovitz and Ronnie Voorspoels. But first of all, I will start to give you a few words about the program of today. Next slide, please. Yeah, we will start with an introduction about our presenters of today, of course. Then we will go to a short introduction of CBI, and around 3 CET time, we will give you an overview of shea use in the European food ingredient market, going through demand, trends, appropriate processing and refining methods, but also packaging options, sustainability approaches, and also how to approach European buyers. That part will be given you by Peter, and then we will have a conversation with Ronnie Voorspoels, and we will hear about his experience in sustainable shea processing at Fuji Oil Ghana, his challenges, the shea value chain. He will give you also examples of partnerships in their supply chain, and also interesting inputs about the meaning of fair price. The last part of this webinar will be a questions and session, a Q&A session that we will give you around 3:45, and we will end this session around 4 o'clock CET. Next slide, please. First of all, let me give you a few words about our presenters of today. Yeah, we have Peter Lovitz. He's an independent consultant to Profound. He's also executive director of Eco Restore, and he has around 3 decades of research and business development experience with commodity, environmental, and production challenge, and a very important network in 12 East, West, and Central African nations. So that gives him a very strong experience in this business, and he also had the possibility to mentor a lot of development of share businesses during the last few years, and he also mentored industry associations for that. Our second presenter and guest speaker of today will be Ronnie Voorspoels. He is the managing director for Fuji Oil Ghana in Belgium, and Ronnie has a profile of a chemical engineer with a career in operations in vegetable oils and fats processing, and he was a plant manager and technical director in the past. He has a very strong experience in various shea projects, like for instance, introducing sustainability in shea kernel procurement, but also building of long-term partnerships to support operations, and also favoring the ESG approach towards partners. Thank you. So starting from my side with a short presentation of our CBI organization. As some of you already know, CBI stands for Center for the Promotion of Imports from Developing Countries. We are actually part of the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, RVO, and our work is funded and commissioned by the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Next slide, please. CBI was established in the early 70s, so we now have more than 50 years of experience in contributing to local sustainable economic development through exports. We mainly focus ourselves on SMEs from emerging countries to build sustainable trade relationships with European buyers. And we also contribute directly to several sustainable development goals, such as decent work and economic growth. We also pay special attention to women and youth in SMEs. We stimulate sustainable production and trade, and we also encourage partnerships for these goals. Next slide, please. Looking at our geographical reach, we have ongoing projects in 23 focus countries. As you can see on the map, we mainly focus ourselves on regions such as West, East, and North Africa, but also the Middle East region, as well as on projects in specific Asian countries like Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka. Thank you. We cover 13 specific sectors based on a selection of dynamic and promising fields and industries, from fresh fruits and vegetables to tourism, from apparel to outsourcing, also cacao, herbs and spices, and of course, the most relevant for you, natural ingredients for food additives. And we also have dedicated sections on natural ingredients for health products and natural ingredients for cosmetics. Next. We work with projects that rely on several support solutions for SMEs and BSOs, such as helping you, for instance, exhibit at leading European trade fairs, but also throughout export coaching programs with individual training, coaching, and market entry support on different levels, like marketing, like digitalization, or strategic export development. You'll see a few examples of current 4-year export projects on our website. So for instance, our shale coaching projects in Nigeria, our Moringa projects in Burkina Faso, and also our women's empowerment project in Kenya. Thank you. Our network is based on quite a large range of partners. So to reach our focus group of SME exporters, we work with BSOs, business support organizations, but also with governments and sector associations, NGOs, international certification authorities, and also here in Europe with some influential importers and international buyers. Next, please. Most important for you to know is that our main resource is market intelligence with easy access and free of charge studies that we offer on our website. So as you can see on the right side of the screen, that's our main page for natural food additives on our CBI website. We try to give you the most practical answers about the European demand for natural ingredients by giving you concrete input about bio requirements, European regulation, and we also give you concrete tips about how to find buyers, tips to develop your business, and we also have concrete product studies like coconut sugar, essential oils for food, gum for food, stevia, natural food colors, or even vanilla extracts. Next slide, please. That's it for our short intro about CBI. Just keep in mind that you can stay updated about our new studies and market publications if you join our social media canals like LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. And before I leave the floor to Peter for his insights about the shea butter market, I would like to know a little bit more about the profile of you as attendees of today. So we're going to start a smart poll that you will see appear on your screen. And the first poll of today is, what is your principal role in the value chain of the shea butter sector? So if everything goes well, yeah, you will see 5 options that you can fill out. You can, we have supplier and producers, we have manufacturers, distributors or wholesalers, retailers, or end customers. So we would be very interesting to know what kind of profile you have. And then we will show you the first results. So Yati, if you can show us the first results coming in of our first poll, and that will give Peter the possibility to see who we have in front of us today. And that gives me also the possibility to give you a very warm welcome, Peter. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. So I hope you're hearing me in okay.
Very good.
We have 37% supplier producer, 18% manufacturer, 22% distributor wholesaler, 8% retailer, and 14% end customer. And I see at the moment we've got about 80 people on this webinar. So myself, I've been working in shea since 1994. I started work in Bole in northwest Ghana, working with Cocoa Research Institute, having been seconded to them by the University of Southampton, where I was a research assistant, and my key role was growing trees. After spending 4 or 5 years of doing that in Ghana, I moved across to Uganda, and we were looking at how to grow trees. We were looking at how to market the butter, process of the butter. So I carried on through the noughties, getting more and more interested in the market and how we improve quality and how we find market in the international countries of the world. So my base is really the supplier producer. So I'm very happy to see that over a third of the people listening are supplier producers, and I'm hoping that they're in Africa. We have a fifth of the people who are manufacturers. That's exciting to see so many people. I mean, I'm wondering what type of manufacturing you're doing. Are you taking the butter into a finished product, or are you just formulating or refining into a raw ingredient, as it were? Nice to see so many distributors and wholesalers. A very important role. We often forget all the logistics, the supply chain issues of how to get to the retailer. But I am happy to see at least we've got some retailers on the call, because our most important person is our customer. How do we keep our customers happy? How do we get money from them in order to sustain the business? And we even do have some end customers. You are very welcome. We look forward to you buying a lot more shea butter. So next slide, please. This presentation is aimed at giving you a good overview of what's going on in the European food industry, but I will give you a little bit of an overview of the total production and market. As you see from this map, shea grows across a vast area. 350 million square kilometers are estimated in 21 different countries. And I'll then talk about some of the trends driving the increasing demand for shea in Europe's food industry. What are some of the processing, refining, packaging methods that are appropriate? And how do we approach buyers to, what approaches buyers are using to implement and establish and verify sustainable shea supply chains, and what challenges are they facing? What are the strategies we can use to effectively promote and market shea as a food ingredient to European buyers? and just a few of the selected ingredient trade shows where you would be well advised to attend if you are looking for market in Europe. Thank you. Next slide. So, as I mentioned, it covers a vast area. We typically find shea being selectively managed and grown in traditional agroforestry parklands. These are mixed cropping systems where we have many shea trees, other economic tree crops, and indigenous or exotic annual crops, such as sorghum or maize or yams or millet. And this is happening across 21 countries. But it's important to realize that we have two subspecies, Vitellaria paradoxa, subspecies paradoxa, typically found in the West African areas. And in East and Central Africa, we have subspecies Nilotica. In total, our estimates are about 2.4 million tons of shea kernels are being collected by probably around 16 million women. And it is a very women's orientated crop. They do all the collection, the post-harvest processing, and the early trading. In West Africa, we estimate about 1.6 million tons are available. Of that, about 500,000 tons are getting exported. And the focus has been on the high stearin content of subspecies paradoxa. This is the C18s, the carbon 18s, and they are of different saturations, but the one we're looking at is stearic acid, which is fully saturated, and it combines into triacyl glycerides of stearin, oleic stearin, and these are symmetrical, and that's very important when you start building foods and their structure and their taste profiles. This structure helps in all of that. And that, I regret to say, is twice what we find in East and Central Africa. So the main focus has been on West African shea exports to the world. Typically, it's used as a food oil, particularly in chocolate confectionery, although it is getting used now as a cosmetic ingredient. And probably about 10% or so of the exports coming from West Africa and East Africa are being used in the personal care sector. But I do want today to focus on the food industry. Next slide, please. As I've mentioned, it is traditionally been grown. It has been archaeologically determined that at least 2,000 to 3,000 years of growing shea, utilizing shea, and eating of shea. It's extensively used in Africa. It's used for frying, as a staple edible oil, or a condiment added to traditional dishes. And across the shea zone, you will find that almost every person in the rural areas is still eating shea butter today. So it is a very important tree crop. Exports to Europe are mainly coming from 7 West African countries: Benin, Burkina, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Mali, Nigeria, and Togo. And we've seen exports coming from the mid-90s of about 50,000 tons of kernel equivalent a year, are now up to 500 to 6,000 tons annually as we go through the mid-2020s. This demand growth has been driven for demand for these exotic specialty fats, especially the shea stearin fraction in the food industry, notably for making cocoa butter equivalents in the chocolate confectionery sector. And after the EU regulation in 2000, which now standardizes that we can use up to 5% of cocoa butter, replacing cocoa butter with cocoa butter equivalents in what we call legal chocolate. But don't forget, we've got plenty of other chocolate confectionery that is not legally called chocolate. I mean, many of our Easter eggs and our Christmas confectionaries might not be actual chocolate. We use it on coatings, we use it in the fillings, we use it in various parts. But more and more, there has been this demand from customers to use clean label or free from ingredients. That's free from dairy or meat, or free from industrially produced ingredients. And it's getting used in bakery, plant-based spreads, ice creams, even infant formulas and other edible products. In the personal care industry, it's the natural and organic and fair trade nature of shea butter that's driving that. But I will stick with the food. Next slide, please. So this is a table of some of the uses that we've found shea is getting used in across Europe. Some very interesting combination fats are getting developed, and it's getting used in pastries, in croissants. In croissants, it's even being used to replace butter and still get as good as, if not better, puff pastry effects. It's used in various confectioneries. It's commonly found now in vegetable spreads as butter substitute and as an industrial oil alternative. It gets used in ice cream, often alongside coconut oil, and we're finding it in quiches, frozen foods, even in vegan cheese and other dairy-free spreads. Next slide, please. Now, we talk about appropriate processing and refining methods, but I have to make it very clear, if you want to sell a product such as shea butter from Africa, it has to be refined. Even if you're entering the mass market for cosmetics, it will probably enter warehousing or plants which have been certified and maintained as food grade. So we have to refine it. Even if it's only pasteurized and filtered and repackaged, it must go through a refining process after leaving the African village. The big multinational companies where we're talking about AAK, Bunge, Fuji, etc., they're sourcing shea kernels across the African parklands. They're doing all the extraction, they're doing the fractionation into the searing components, and they usually control all stages of the processing, refining, and packaging of these ingredients for sale further into the chain of the food ingredient sector. But because of an interest in organic and fairly traded ingredients, shea ingredients, there's been a growth in toll refining, and two main plants are very good at this. They are the Special Refining Company and Cargill's plant Zohr. They're both located in Zaandam on the outskirts of Amsterdam. They have incredible facilities, incredible staff, and they do an enormous quantity of various fats and oils. But shea butter is one of their specialities, and they're well worth approaching if you want to find a partner in your supply chain to refine your African shea butter. Now, they offer various packaging options. Next slide, please. And I do want to note that the picture on the right is not coming from a European plant, but this is a typical scene in a handcrafted production center where we use plastic lined boxes, usually filling to 25 kilograms. After the hot oil has been cooled down, it's poured into these boxes and then used to stuff containers and shipped into Europe. Once it's gone through the melting, the refining, then these two companies, Zohr and SRC, are offering a range of containers which your next buyer will probably be the one specified what they want their shea butter delivered in. They can do IBCs, they can do jerry cans, they can fill cartons, all sorts of opportunities. And it will depend very much on what your buyer is hoping for how they receive the shea butter. Next slide, please. Now, if we take a look at this picture on the right, I'm afraid I could only find one from an American supermarket, but these are just the typical range of products that we're seeing in the Western world supermarkets. Most of these products are mono products. They range from palm oil to sunflower oil to coconut to olive, etc., etc. And it's a very, very competitive market. And that's just the mono products. as we see the various fats and oils of the world getting put in as food ingredients on all these various bakery and confectionery products, I think you can imagine how complex and highly evolved the European food market has become. The European food ingredients market has strictly enforced and very complex regulatory, ranging from what you can use for packaging materials to how you're formulating, what you're including in your formulations, your recipes, and how you present your labeling information, describing the recommended daily amounts of different compounds and all the health and safety, ethical considerations. And these regulatories are usually addressing issues all the way from the farm in Africa to the table in a European household. So you must be fully prepared to partner with your buyers. Now, your modern European food ingredients buyer will probably have a supply chain logistical support firm, somebody like SAP, and they will be going through those supply chains with a needle looking for any issues. And you as a supplier will have to provide proof of all the claims you're making. You'll have to provide origin proof, you'll have to explain your processing methods, you'll have to show your analyses, any concerns about contamination from, say, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons to heavy metals. So I regret to say at this point in time, it is highly unlikely that an African processed and refined and packaged product will be acceptable in the European open marketplace. I'm afraid we do have major trust issues, and there have been so many examples of bad products spoiling the marketplace. So at the moment, we will have to rely on European refining to produce the ingredients such as shea to go into food. Beware, the market is a bully, and be planning carefully. We don't want to see CapEx money wasted in making the wrong plan. Next slide, please. So one of the things we've been talking about is sustainability, free from, clean label, and whether it's organic or fair trade certified. I mean, there has been a huge growing demand in the last 10, 15 years for handcrafted shea butter coming from Africa, going into Europe, America, Asia, etc. And this is one of the things that's been driving this opportunity for toll refining. But it does mean that we have a very expensive product. If you see the margins on top of organic and fair trade butter, then this has been quite a problem when we're going into the mass market for food. And I'm afraid in the last year, 2024, we've had a bit of a climate crisis going on in West Africa. We had a 2-month hot season. Every single day, temperatures went over 40 degrees centigrade. We then had a couple of big rains, and we thought the rainy season had started. It cooled down. It did not rain for another 2 months. We have seen the worst shea harvest I've ever seen in 30 years. So pricing of shea butter is a critical point if you're going to find buyers in the food market. The market might be huge, but they are very fickle in terms of pricing, and certification pricing is quite a challenge now. And most of the mass market suppliers are insetting their sustainability into their supply chains, and they're developing very good methods of dealing with women, encouraging protection of shea trees, controlling of the nuts going through warehouses, and all the other steps in their supply chain. Some good examples are AAK's better sourcing of shea, Bunge's Where Life Grows, and Fuji's shea sustainability program, Tembe Can Do. We're also all members of the Global Shea Alliance and their sustainability program, which is trying to bring in everybody all the way from the downstream retailers up to the pickers, the processors, the growers of shea trees, to get sustainability inset into the shea industry. I'm afraid we have a lot of threats from land use conversion. We have exotic tree crops like cashew and mango, and modernizing of agriculture, clearing of the trees, bringing in the big machines, spreading of towns, urbanization, and even mining is happening across the shear zone. Large volumes of pesticides, herbicides, which don't agree with broadleaf trees. We have insecticides knocking out the pollinators. I've mentioned about climate change, and there has been a never-ending demand for wood fuel, of which shear, I'm afraid, is a rather good cooking wood. But we've had a lot of progress. We've got some amazing projects like the Ghana Shear Landscape Emission Reduction Program, the GSLRP project, and we have many partners just in northern Ghana who are developing the methods to grow trees, shear trees into other indigenous on the mass scale. A lot of successes from grafting. We can produce flowers and fruits on a seedling that has been grafted, and we can get flowers and fruits in 4 to 5 years. And we are working on those methods to scale them up. We do, however, encourage them to go into agroforestry systems. We don't want to be meeting the same challenges we've had in other industrial crops and end up with low biodiversity plantations. Quite a few people are working on insect pollinators, stingless bees, honeybees, and we're seeing how we can improve pollination. And of course, we need other economic benefits reaching these communities. They have to work and live all year round, and shear is probably only 10 to 20% of a household's income in Africa. So they need help with growing their crops, with finding good water, and various other businesses to keep them happy all the year round. We have a lot of work to do. Next slide. So, as I've been mentioning, the food ingredients market in Europe is a complex place. It has a lot of regulatory, and people are getting bored of greenwashing and fake and false claims. So make sure you tell your story in as factually correct manner as possible. Find a way to inset sustainability into your supply chain and promote it with verification proof. There are people out there who can do audits. There are NGOs, there are commercial firms who can come and check on your supply chains and make sure they are doing what you say they are doing. We have halal, we have kosher certification, we have fair trade, but do make sure all your paperwork is up to date. Your financial audits, your supply chain audits, your certificates, your lab analysis, and all the other regulatory materials. If you have a good portfolio of paperwork, your buyers will be very impressed, and you can move to a deal much faster than now having to go and spend another year getting up to date. Build partnerships, build and become members of the relevant organizations. I mentioned the Global Shear Alliance. There are partnerships with NGOs and commercial firms. I'm sure our colleague Ronnie will tell us more about. There are oil societies. The American Oil Chemists Society is well known. Get involved, find out what is going on, what regulatory you need, and develop your marketing strategies then that can include quality social media coverage and all the other materials that support your supply chain. How do we meet these buyers in Europe? The standard way is to attend the European trade shows. I'll mention a couple at the end, and these are big shows. I mean, we can have 30, 40, 50, 100,000 people attending these shows. We have hundreds, even thousands of exhibitors. So they're busy places. And they're a great way to find out what's going on in the industry, to see what the trends are, to meet buyers and to interact with other suppliers and so on. And don't forget to research all available literature. The internet is a goldmine, but you do have to find out what is out there. And so the CBI publications that I've been helping with Profound to develop are including all these sort of links to the regulatory, the certifiers, etc. So do make sure that you study them before you get to those trade shows and that you're well aware of what's going on. Last slide, please. So these are some web links. Probably the most important show that has just happened is Food Ingredients Europe 2024. There will be another show in 2025 in December. CL Paris is happening next year. It's a biannual show. We have Free From Food, we have Vita Foods. BioFach in Nuremberg in Germany is a fantastic show, but it's focused on organic ingredients, although there are some very big markets for organic and fair trade, and the IBO Trade Fair as well. So look at these, huge amounts of information on their websites. Get involved with the industry by learning, researching, contacting people, and let's see how well we can increase the trade of African shea butter into Europe. A very big thank you to CBI, Profound, and everyone listening today. I'd now like to introduce my colleague Ronnie and hear what it's actually like to do business in shea. Thank you, Eduard.
Thank you very much, Peter, for this very useful overview of the European shea market. Before I leave the floor to Ronnie for his concrete experience, I would just like to give a quick reminder to our attendees today that they have the possibility to share their questions and concerns in our GoToWebinar tool. So please use that option and please send us your questions. Ronnie, nice to see you and a very warm welcome to this session.
Hi, Edward. Welcome, everyone. So I'm Ronnie Voorspols. I am the Managing Director, as has been already announced, of Fuji Oil Ghana. We are based in Techiman, the heart of Ghana. We started our operations over 10 years ago, around 2011, and we have grown in the meantime to close to 100 active staff members in our Ghana operations. We have also grown bit by bit to a consumption, an annual consumption of about 50,000 tons of shea nuts. So we're definitely not the biggest, but also not the smallest. We try to do this sourcing and also the processing in a sustainable way, and that is something that we learned also throughout the years. And in this short presentation from my side, I would rather like to share a couple of challenges and solutions that we have implemented to meet these challenges. Next slide, please. One of the biggest challenges that I've met in this whole industry is what I call the difference in scale. And just follow me from left to right on this slide here. You have in the field, you have the shea tree, an indigenous tree, a tree that grows into traditional agroforestry systems. It doesn't grow, doesn't like to grow also in industrial plantations. A shea tree that is also threatened. Peter explained it also. There's a couple of challenges. Shea trees are disappearing. And the fruits, the shea fruits, the shea nuts, they are collected and they are processed by rural farming communities. So that is really the people living in the villages for instance, in the north of Ghana, throughout the shea belt. One woman in a normal year collects roughly around 200 kilograms of nuts. And Peter explained already, there's estimations that there's about 16 million African women that collect shea and that try to get a bit of additional income for their household by selling this shea on the local markets. So you see on the left-hand side, something that is very traditional, something that is very rural, something that is very small scale and very individual. We move to the right-hand side of the slide, then you have the industry that is producing, using the shea ingredients, producing plant-based oils and fats products. This is high-end processing. Peter explained already, refining is a must, but besides refining, there's quite a lot of other processes that are being implemented all of them are really high-end processes. The products that are being made, the fillings, the spreads, the coatings, the confectionery products, the milk fat replacers, and you name it, all these products are not just originating by accident. They require a lot of research and development, a lot of tailor-made approach, open innovation approach, and so on between processors and the final food industry on the other hand. That is about the complexity of the business of producing the product. On the bottom side, on the right, you can see also that we have to meet in this European market a lot of legislation. We have to be compliant with legislation on food safety. We have to monitor contaminants. Contaminants can, for instance, be contamination with lubricants or pesticides, herbicides, and so on, traces that are still inside the oils and fats that are not accepted within the final food products. Traceability, where does it come to? What is your supply chain? The sustainability and the human rights throughout the whole supply chain. And I just mentioned a couple of logos below of things that we meet in the oils and fats industry where we have to be compliant with. Now, in order to bridge from the left to the right, what is the industry and mainly Fuji doing to overcome this problem of scale is, first of all these individual women, we try to group them into cooperatives. Cooperative depends a bit on whose system you're looking at, but for us it's roughly around 500 women in one cooperative with a strong female leadership. We provide them also with smaller aggregation warehouses, so that the nuts that are collected by every individual woman can already be aggregated by the leadership of the cooperative into these aggregation warehouses. Before we collect them, with the leadership of the cooperative, it's also possible to initiate some negotiation on a fair price. And in order to grow these cooperatives, what you can also do is provide development funds, initiatives that can actually grow these cooperatives to independent levels where they grow stronger and they can take own initiatives. What you need also to make this all work is quite a lot of partnerships. In the next slide, I will come back on that. But by doing so, you also create a lot of local value. Next slide. When you put all this into practice, you see here on this drawing, from left to right, you see the sheer value chain that Fuji Oil is applying. From the collectors on the left side, where you see in the middle that we from Fuji side, we try to organize them into cooperatives. But then you need a sales model also. You need to aggregate. You need to some logistic chains, warehouses, and so on. And then you have your first step of real industrial processing. Which in our case we do with a partner. We don't do ourselves. We have this partnership with Ghana Nuts here in Techiman, next door to our plant, and then we go to our own plant where we do the fractionation. All of that is still within West Africa, is still within the area where we try to create as much as possible local value. And then we have our fractions, let's say our more or less final products, where we send them then to further processing. For instance, we can send our stearin to the Fuji Oil Group companies that are doing the refining, that are doing the blending with other ingredients, and then make final products that can be used by our customers in the chocolate market or in other food applications. The olein, that is the more liquid part, we even have applications, quite a lot of applications also on the West African market, food for a part, but mostly oleochemical products like soap production, and that is even local, but can also be exported. So you have a whole value chain where you try to focus as much as possible on the creation of local value, starting from the collectors up to the final processors that are mostly in Europe. Next slide, please. I mentioned partnerships, and on this slide, I would like to take you through a couple of levels of partnerships that we have throughout this supply chain. On the left, this is really in the field partnerships that we have with local and with global NGOs mainly. They help us with the creation of these cooperatives, looking for the potential, and that has to do with the good relation they have with local traditional and political leaders. They see the potential of some villages, of some women, and that allows us to create these cooperatives. Once they are created, these partners can also help us with the training that all these the women inside the cooperatives need to get on quality, what is good quality for us, on the aggregation, training on negotiation, also on how important the she tree is, that they should preserve the parklands instead of cutting the trees. And then finally, they can also help in the final negotiation process, the price setting, and then help with the aggregation. And in the end, at the end of the season, when a bonus is applied or something, then they can also help setting up development projects and grow the cooperatives to levels of more independence and more maturity. In the middle, you have the local private and industrial partner.
Yes. Please go on.
Yeah, sorry. The private and the industrial partner, that helps us, like EcoRestore, for instance. We've seen Peter with reforestation projects, but that can also go to the whole logistic chain that needs to be set up. Banks and institutes that provide loans for our cooperatives, also an important partner, and then industrial processing partners and so on. And then we move to the international partnerships that we need, and then we're looking at customers, we're looking at the big processors, but we're also looking at the bigger banks that finance and that make sure that we get all the money that we need to provide all the suppliers with the necessary funds. Next slide, please. And that is then my last slide, where I want to go a little bit more in detail on the challenges of, because we've mentioned it a few times, we need to pay a fair price. But a couple of quotes just from my side to a couple of takeaways. What is a fair price? If you look at the definition, then it's something like an ethical, acceptable minimum price that is paid for goods that you supply. Point of attention. People always believe that a minimum price or an ethical price or a fair price is all about the absolute price itself, but it's also about the unit. You pay a price for something. You pay a price, and if you go on the local markets, you pay a price for a bowl of shea nuts. Well, a bowl is not a fair unit. Although women will say, yeah, but these bowls are all the same size, they are not. A kilogram is a kilogram. So not only the price, also the unit needs to be fair, otherwise you don't have a fair price. Second point is offer and demand. It may be necessary to come with a fair price, but offer and demand are still economical rules that also apply. And the food industry also has a moral obligation to make sure that food remains affordable for as many people as possible. So if you have a poor crop like this year, the offer is low, the demand is still high, so the price goes high, very normal. When the prices, on the other hand, go too high, producers also have alternatives, and they look away from shea butter and they look at these alternatives. And somebody told me once that the best cure against high prices is the high prices themselves. So let's also be very careful that we keep prices fair, but also reasonable for the final consumer. And then a final thing that I want to mention is, if you want to get a fair price, also work on your efficiency, work on your cost price. Losses, poor quality, considering a co-product as a waste product instead of valorizing it. All these things are examples of losses where you will not want the buyer to pay for your inefficiencies. So it's all our obligation, our moral obligation also to be as efficient as possible. Couple of examples of efficiency improvements that can generate profit. For instance, if a woman can only bring one bowl or a big bucket of nuts home, or she can use through the cooperatives maybe also a tricycle to go to the field, then she can transport bigger volume, she can collect more, she saves time, and she can be more efficient and cost efficient also. Energy stoves, energy efficient stoves can also reduce the consumption of firewoods, while it also improves the quality that can come with a premium. Goat products, don't throw them away as waste products, but see if there is possibilities to turn them into something useful, like energy. The husks, the share meal can be used as a source of energy. Or turn them into value-adding applications. You can make soap from a shea olein, can be used in cosmetic applications, even if you would consider that these byproducts are not always useful for food. And also I want to stress that local processing is also reducing your logistic costs, not only the cost, but also the CO2 emissions of your logistics. So all these things, fair price is not just about paying a high amount of money. It's a whole mechanism that is behind it. Ethical minimum price, yes, but let's also take into account offer and demand and the lack of efficiency. And let's not forget that the unit also needs to be fair, not only the price. Thank you for the opportunity to share a couple of these challenges and solutions that we try to work out at Fujio Ghana.
Very much, Ronnie, for this very interesting and concrete input. It's time to go on to the questions from our audience. Actually, we've been receiving a few questions about EUDR, and that gives us the possibility to give you a little poll also about this theme. We would like to know a bit more about EUDR. What are your views on EUDR? That's our second poll that you can give you. So please fill out the poll you see on the screen. What are your views on EUDR? It should be cancelled. It should be actioned as soon as possible. It should be actioned by the end of 2025, or it should be modified before being actioned. So we're very interested in having your inputs and view about this. Maybe you can see the first results of this poll. Interesting, yes. We see that more than 30% think that it should be actioned by end of 25. We see also that 22% say that it should be modified before being actioned. And actually, 16% think it should be actioned as soon as possible. So Ronnie and Peter, what are your views on this?
Hello again. I feel that Ronnie should be a better person to answer this, because he's actually in the trade. But what I will say about EUDR is that currently shear is not directly affected. So EUDR does not impact shear. Shear is not a cause of deforestation. Shear is under threat from other activities, such as clearing for commercial agriculture or urbanization or wood fuel. So shear is currently not in the EUDR directive. And my view is that we are losing our forests and our indigenous trees at such a fast rate that a scheme like this needs to be actioned and implemented as soon as possible. but I do understand that it is such a huge and complex task to understand all our various commodity supply chains from their range of diverse sourcing. As Ronnie explained, I mean, individual women are picking nuts from the ground in their farms and then going all the way through the supply chain before it ends up as an ingredient in a European bar of chocolate. So it's extremely complex. But I think I need to ask Ronnie, what are your views in the industry?
Well, it's. I think you've said most of it, Peter. I can absolutely agree to what you say. The shade tree itself should not really be a tree that we should focus on really as a tree that is being cut in order to create. For instance, one of the ingredients that is under EUDR these days is palm oil. And that is all about cutting tropical forests in order to create palm plantations. Since at this moment shea is not really a tree that grows into plantation, it's rather a tree that is under threat than a tree that is causing the problem. So we should not be too much afraid of that. On the other hand, what I have seen, I've not been involved directly myself, but as Fuji Oil, we have been very much, my colleagues at Fuji Oil have been very much involved into the EUDR preparations for instance, for palm oil and for cocoa. And again, all the administration, all the registration, all the certification that comes with these kind of legislations is huge. And the obligation is that as a European buyer and processor, you must make sure that your whole supply chain complies with the rules. What you will very often see is that a European buyer for an international company is very often pushing the questions and the obligations upstream towards the supplier of the ingredients. So once we enter into a EUDR or any kind of other certification or guaranteeing mechanism, we need to be aware that we will get a lot of questions, not just the final buyer and the final processors, but also throughout the whole supply chain. We will get a lot of questions, and it will be a lot of work to make sure that we get the correct reports, the correct answers that are auditable, that are transparent for our buyers to be satisfied with.
Thank you, Ronnie. Perhaps we could go on to two other questions of the audience. I have a general question for both of you, coming from Ellie Dico. Hi, please, can you refer a consulting firm which can assist in elaboration of transformation process from shea nuts to butter, styrene, and olein? And we have a more concrete question coming from Gerard Stapleton about kernel harvests. How much smaller is the 2024 shea kernel harvest? What is the impact of border closures, for instance, in Mali and Burkina Faso? Could we please have your insights about these two questions, Peter and Ronnie?
Thank you. I'll answer the request for a consultant quickly. It would very much depend where you are based. Are you African based? We have a good network. We have people, including myself and my colleagues, who can offer advice on your processing, supply chain, etc. There's some quite technical and expensive steps, and we would probably need to also then bring in the correct international consultants. If you're based outside of Africa, again, there are consultants in the fats and oils industry that we can introduce you to. And it's probably best that we would go through CBI or Profound to make those connections. Ronnie, I don't know if you have any other opinions on consulting. You would be helping competitors, of course. Do you want to answer that quickly before I answer the other question?
Yeah, I think it's just like you said, there is a couple of consultants around, but don't underestimate that whatever kind of processing we are talking about, you're not talking about something that costs a few thousand or a few $10,000s. You're talking about something that costs millions of dollars, euros. So it's really high level processing. Solvents are very often involved. That requires also a lot of safety measures. So it is really something. I don't want to make anybody afraid of this. I think it is still an interesting challenge, but it's quite big investments, quite big capex that is really needed to do it.
Yeah, I fully support you there. These are multi-million-dollar plants. We have multiple of them coming up in Africa. Fuji, of course, other firms are commissioning and actively using their plants, but they are expensive, tens of millions of dollars to set up a fractionation plant. Moving on, there's this question about the crop this year. We are still assessing it. The trade is still ongoing. In Ghana, maybe we've got 20,000 tons for trade. I don't know. I mean, it was an abysmal crop. Even in the villages, the women are telling me that they just didn't bother collecting. But we are still assessing it. In the way I assess the shea crop, I would say it's probably a quarter of what I would call a good exportable crop. Ronnie, do you have an opinion on the crop volumes that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's I think you mentioned earlier on in your presentation the worst crop in at least your history, your memory. My memory doesn't go that long. It's only for 10, 12 years, but I hear the same thing everywhere. Everybody I'm talking to is really talking about the worst crop ever because of circumstances. The question also was about the effect of the Mali and the Burkina borders being closed. I can fully understand the reason behind that. If you want to create local value, then just seeing the nuts leaving your ports or your borders by train or truck or whatever is just creating a minimum level of added value. If you want to create more added value, then you need to make sure that processing is also done within your borders. Of course, if you want to promote that, closing the borders is one way to do it, but you also need to create an atmosphere. You need to create an environment where investors, local investors, international investors, or local investors with support of international investors are very keen on investing in capacity building within your country. So I think the attempt now to close the border is a first step, but we will have to see the next coming years some more initiatives really to create more capacity building in both in Mali and in Burkina Faso.
Thank you, Roddy. I mean, from my side, I do suspect that leaky borders, African borders, will allow the flow of nuts from Mali and Burkina coming into Ivory Coast, Ghana, Togo, Benin. But there's a lot of talk that the bans might get lifted if the processing capacity has been fulfilled and they realize that we are sitting on a pile of nuts that will deteriorate in quality if we don't get them shipped quickly. It is a complex supply chain, and if you think about moving sacks of dried kernels versus shipping tankers of semi-liquid oil, it is also quite a big logistical challenge to set up the supplies from the hinterland, the Mali and Burkina, all the way across our wonderful African roads to get it down to a reliable port. So it's a complex question, but for many years, we've all been trying to promote more investment into processing, upstream processing, more value addition, local employment, investment, etc. So I don't see this as a permanent thing. I think there will be a readjustment, but I do see the knee-jerk reaction was probably justified from Mali and Burkina. They've been they've been having a hard time economically over the last few years. Some other question, I think I should probably just roll into them. The time is running on. Any permits needed by buyers to protect the people from exploitation? I will say from my side that we are seeing better organization. There's the Global Shea Alliance, there are the local industry associations. We are seeing in Ghana the development of the Tree Crop Development Authority, and there is already a shea technical working group. And so there are organizations getting set up, government, national organizations, to try and regulate the trade. I'm a big believer in free trade, but I do not support exploitation. Pricing is fairly open market here. I mean, with a low crop like this year, people are scrambling to buy the nuts, and the top prices are getting paid. I'll just quickly answer the other question we have. How do we contact buyers in the EU or in the UK? My big recommendation is go to the trade shows that are involved in this sector, the big fats and oils trade shows like Food Ingredients Europe. That's how we in the industry meet each other. And if you start attend regularly, year after year, you build friendships, build relationships, and get your business rolling. Thank you.
And I maybe
add on that, Ron?
Yeah, from my side, let me reply also on the question of Karen on the exploitation. Just an experience now. At this moment, we don't see too many questions from our final customers on specific permits. What I do see is more and more interest in sustainability projects where you involve the local population and the kind of impact you have through these systems. So having these systems certified will definitely help. So certified by some independent body will certainly help everybody to understand that you're not just telling your own story, but that is actually also verified. I do depends a bit on who is your final customer. There's a couple of customers in the European market that are really very keen on making sure that whatever they supply to their final customers in the shelves in the supermarkets and so on is going for a fair price with full respect for the local population, is respecting things like child labor challenges, forced labor challenges, and so on. So especially these brands, they've approached me already personally a few times with more detailed questions, and you clearly see that from this kind of approach, the questions are a bit more serious than from the general food industry at this moment concerning shea. And that is very important because the questions on exploitation and so on are very common within the whole food industry, but not at this moment yet on the level of shea. And that has everything to do with the attention that is given by European Commission these days to cocoa, to palm oil, and all these things. It's not just deforestation; it is also about human rights and respect for the human being and so on.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Okay.
Edward, did you want to add anything, or shall I continue answering some of these remarks and questions?
It is 4:10 CET. Just perhaps we could go for one or two last questions before closing, unfortunately, the event. Maybe a question from Halim Abdulaziz that was interesting. In Ghana, we experience high cost of certifications. Is there a way of looking into the costs of certification for the benefits of the smallholder farmer? So could you tell us a bit about certification issues?
From experience I've had with smallholder buying, I mean, you're aware I used to work with Savannah Fruit Company, is that in those days we were very much, the onus was on the buyer to pay the costs of the certification and work towards encouraging producers, nut pickers, collectors to get into that supply chain and then be paying them better prices for whether it's organic or fair trade. And the auditors who the buying company has to pay has then to verify that you are paying the better prices. But there has been shift in European regulatory towards the onus being on the small scale producer, which I have struggled to understand because the small scale producers are struggling to pay and get organized at the scale in order to produce certified products, whether it's shear or anything else. So I think it worked better before, but I don't know. Ronnie, what do you think about this?
No, I think I agree with you. Even if today the approach is maybe slightly different, I would still refer to my slide about partnerships. I think this is part of where your industrial partner, or let's say the next level in the whole supply chain, should play a role. When, for instance, you would partner up with a company like Fuji Oil, you would not be the only one. There would also be others, and then Fuji Oil will decide at a certain moment to have a certification for a number of the smallholder farmers, and then we can group them. We can negotiate and then get a bit of a better price. I fully understand that these costs are really very high, even for us as Fuji Oil Ghana. Sometimes I'm like, wow. Where is my benefit in this? Where is my payback? Who is gonna actually pay a higher price because I have this certificate? So certainly for a smallholder farmer, these costs are far too high. My advice would be partner up with somebody and then have them cover these costs.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to the remark made by another question, or another remark is. There's this feeling that smallholder producers of shea butter are being pushed away because of all these regulatory, and that the interest from women to go out and collect a meager quantity of shea nuts, the interest is reducing. Something I will say that comes directly from my African colleagues here. What about the men? We are busy supporting the women to collect the shea nuts, but if the men who are actually the guardians, the controllers of the land tenure, whether they keep trees or clear them for their farming activities, I'm a strong believer that my African colleagues are onto something. We need to support the male African shea tree farmer so they get some benefits for keeping the trees and growing more of these trees back in. We're looking at carbon trading, we're looking at biodiversity benefits, but we need to look at the whole family, men, women, children, the household in an African parkland context. We need year-round benefits to come to them in order to bother keeping shea, and we need more better yielding trees where it's easier to collect from, with better processing methods where it's easier to produce a higher quality, more sellable product. We need to get into some holistic thinking. No offense, Jordy, but just building a warehouse in a village isn't going to change anything for all those households and all those different people in the village. So we need to bring the gender equation towards the male tree farmer as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Any other questions?
I think it's.
I don't have any new questions coming on my side.
Please keep in mind that we will also be able to come back to you with answers after this webinar, because I see that there are still lots of questions coming in, but unfortunately it's 4:15. So we will have to end this session. And it was great to hear you both, Peter and Donnie, about your concrete input and your concrete tips on how to enter the European markets of shea butter. I'm sure that your experience is worth a lot for our focus group of CBI SMEs. And I'm sure it's worth a lot not only for the primary exporters, but also for the experienced ones. So I'd really like to thank you both for your very concrete inputs and your valuable information. And just before we end this session, please keep in mind that we will share this webinar with all the attendees afterwards. And please also check out our website for latest natural ingredients and natural food additives publications. And that gives me the possibility to end this session. That's it for us now. Hope to see you soon in one of our future webinars or in one of our country projects. And on behalf of Peter and Ronnie, I wish you a very nice day. See you soon.
Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Good luck with the share trade. Bye-bye.
Yep. Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much, and hoping for a better season next year. Bye-bye.